I am your Special Education City Advisory Committee Chair, Troy Sampson. We have our board members on board. We have Sarah Whalen, who's our Vice Chair. We have Jamie Alfonso Kumo, who is our Secretary. We have Janie Payne, who is our Treasurer. We have Pam Talley, who is our Community Outreach Manager, on board with us tonight. From our partners at PGCPS, we have Trinell Bowman, who's Associate Director of Special Education. We have Karen Andrews, who is Coordinating Supervisor for Special Education Department. We have Marcy Tershon, Program Coordinator with the Family Engagement Center, and Yvette Young, Social Worker with the Family Support Center. I don't see Dr. Diete on here yet. And then, of course, we have parents and other concerned citizens on the call as well. Welcome, Ms. Wooten and Ms. Coleman. Alex Barnes, I don't know if Alex is male or female. Welcome Terry Hampton and Sheila and Ms. Newman. So welcome all. We have a nice presentation tonight. I'm pretty sure everybody can probably resonate that have children, you know, well, even not children in the school system still, that struggles with screen time. That's something that has become a real big issue as we have been moving forward through this pandemic. We've been between virtual learning and in-class learning and all those things back and forth. And so a lot of our children and students have become a little hooked. I don't want to say addicted, but hooked on the screen time. And so we're going to be doing a presentation on that. But before we get into that presentation, we're going to hear from Trinell, who's going to give us an update on Special Education Department. And for everybody on the call, just know that this portion of the meeting, the presentation portion of the meeting, is being recorded. And then once we finish with the presentations and go to questions and public comment, we will turn the recording off to respect everyone's privacy if they want to discuss a sensitive matter, so that it's not recorded. And so without further ado, I will turn it over to Trinell for an update from our Special Education Department.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our SECAC meeting for February. Just have a few updates to share with you. I know Marcy's loading up our presentation. The first update, I just wanted to make sure that everyone is aware of that we're continuing to hold our COVID vaccination clinics throughout the district. And so I wanted to make sure that you were aware that all of our clinics, again, are offering the Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson vaccine supply. Marcy, could you just click on the vaccination clinic information there? And then if she scrolls down a little bit, you'll be able to see all of the dates that are available in terms of clicking on the link to scheduling an appointment. We did have some cancellations last week, but again, you'll see all of the upcoming dates that are available in terms of scheduling the appointment. So just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. On the next slide, I just wanted to remind everyone, we do have our parent support groups that are available around behaviors change and supporting behaviors, and as well as parents wellness support groups. So we definitely encourage you to sign up for those. Our behavior support group, our next session is on consequences, and that will be this week on February 24th. And then as far as our parent wellness support group, our next session will be in March as part of our parent empowerment conference. We'll have some series just again, thinking about how you refuel and support during these high anxiety times. So your mental and social emotional health is also important to us. So again, you can register at the links provided there to sign up for those support sessions. Again, on the next slide, we just want to make sure that if this is your first SECAC meeting attending, or you have not signed up for our Family Support Center newsletter, we strongly encourage you to do so. That you can get information that comes out from our Family Support Center related to workshops or just tidbits or things that they would like to share as part of the newsletter. And then we wanted to make sure that everyone knows that our 11th annual Parent Empowerment Conference is scheduled for March 19th. That would run through June. So that will be our kickoff date on March 19th. We will do virtual presentations again like we did last year, and we'll run the series from March all the way into June. And we will, of course, record those sessions. And then the last thing we'd like to give an update on is our college and career fair. It will be a virtual event that will take place on Wednesday, April 6th from 6 p.m. to 7:30. And this is very, very important for our families and our students, where you'll get an opportunity to learn about the various educational pathways that are available from our industry professionals. You'll be able to look at post-secondary programs and outcomes. We have representatives that come from our community college, universities, technical and trade programs. So again, please register. You do not want to miss this virtual event. Is available here on the site. And we will share these slides with SECAC so that they will post them so that you can have access to all of the different links. And that concludes my updates for today.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Chanel. Does anybody have any questions about the updates that Chanel just shared with us all? Okay. All right. Well, I'll take silence as a no. Okay. So I'm going to take over this portion of the presentation, or the time slot that we have available. And I'm going to share a presentation with you about help. Can I get my child off the screen? And what that's talking about is our children, since COVID has come around and we've gone back and forth between virtual and non-virtual, and of course, with technology being the way it is, our children have gone through this transformation where they become hooked on technology, especially when COVID hit. Some of our children have devices for, occupational therapy reasons or to assist them with, but a lot of our children were just going to school without devices and then using devices in school. But with the hybrid, or should I say when COVID hit, they were sent home with devices. And so they were expected to be pretty much all day on devices, all day in front of a screen. And we have to recognize that a lot of our children maybe not be able to handle that situation with those devices being so readily available, and may end up getting hooked on those devices. And that's something that actually happens, and it happens with adults too. So I'm going to share my screen so that I can queue up my presentation. So bear with me for 1 second. All right, does everybody see my screen? Give me a thumbs up or yay if you see my screen. Okay, all right. So welcome to our SECAC pre-G meeting, February 22nd, 2022, at 6:30. And today's topic is help. I cannot get my child off of the screen. And so the internet has become one of the most significant sources of information and entertainment for children and adolescents. And we all know it's the same thing as for adults too. And everything has been moving at the speed of light. And so everything is now available on a small screen or a tablet or iPad at the click of a button. And with the advent of distant learning due to the COVID-19 pandemic, many of our students have substantially increased their daily usage of devices and online screen time. And so that's gone up because now they're at home with these devices in their home pretty much all day long and in class. And so this is a question for any of our parents on the call. Do you feel that your child has become increasingly attached to the screen, meaning cell phones, gaming, computers? If you think so, just throw your hand up, use the emoji, or give yourself a, yeah, there you go, Ms. Newman, a thumbs up to let me know if you were one of those parents that feel as though your child or student has become increasingly attached to the screen. So that's good. We got some participation here. Good, very good. All right, and so just listen and learn about strategies that you and your family can use to monitor and to reduce screen time. And this is not to, this presentation is not to give you tips on how to completely eliminate it, but it's how to manage it and minimize it as best you can. And so you will also hear about steps you should consider if your child is having difficulties backing away from the screen, what steps and methods you can actually use, kind of like a weaning process and things of that nature. And so we're going to get into a little bit of the science, right? So The science of this, and according to Dr. Victoria Dunkley, who she wrote a book called Reset Your Child's Brain, basically a guide to getting your child's brain unhooked from technology and screen time, especially interactive, as it acts as a stimulant, but not like caffeine, cocaine, or etc. It's like a stimulant that gets them going. And I remember reading a study years ago about Wall Street analysts and how they talked about they had an MRI on these analysts, and as they were doing trades and making money, you could see their MRIs go off the chart with the brain, with dopamine and all those sorts of things going on in their brains because they were excited. It's kind of like the study they did with gamblers too, just excited about seeing that and doing those things and making that money. And so that's kind of like the same thing that's kind of going on with our kids. And so the dopamine released by electronic stimulation affects our children differently because their cerebral cortexes are not developed enough to feel satisfied in small doses or to be able to self-regulate. So that dopamine release that we adults may experience when we go gambling or we're participating in something or we're giving a presentation even, it affects us a little bit differently. And we're able, because our cerebral cortexes are a little bit more mature than our children's are. And so we're able to, get a sense of satisfaction or know when to get off of, or know when to stop binge watching, Game of Thrones or Ozark or whatever everybody's watching out on Netflix or these other streaming services. We know how to self-regulate that, but because our students and our children's cerebral cortexes are not as developed yet, they're going to keep wanting it because they don't know how to self-regulate and be satisfied in small doses. And so as parents, we shouldn't expect our children's brains to adapt or manage the level of this artificial stimulation because their brain is just not ready or meant to handle it. It's just a scientific fact. They're just not ready to be able to handle it. And so that includes managing their own screen time or misusing social media. And so, some of us have young adults or even teenagers that, especially with the boys, that will spend all day long on that joystick and not realize that the day's gone by, not realize that, hey, I need to get off this game. I need to go eat. I need to use the bathroom. I need to cut it off. I got to go here. I got to go there. Their brain's just not, able to adapt and manage that level of stimulation that they're getting from spending time on the screen, whether it be a video game, YouTube, Netflix, or even using social media. So their brains are just not ready to be able to handle that stimulation and manage it. And so this expectation is a challenge, especially when some of us adults, and we know who we are, I'm not going to call anybody out, experience the same challenge with screen times. I.e., I know there's probably a couple of principals on here that can't put the phone down from checking email all night, or a couple of associate directors that can't put the phone down at certain times of the night because they're checking emails or they get that ding on their phone of an email coming in and they got to pick it up and they got to look at it. So, we're kind of guilty of that too. Some of us, even as adults, spend more time on social media than we should. We definitely spend time on Netflix binge watching stuff and binge watching shows because one show will get you hooked. The next thing you know, you're in this cycle of watching one episode after another, and before you know it, you done watch 5 seasons of a show, and it's 10 o'clock Saturday morning. You started on Thursday night. So the approach to this is more like a 12-step program, not like the 12-step program that we have for adults who are dealing with any sort of substance abuse or alcohol abuse. But this is just a 12-step program or 12-step guide or 12 things you should do to try to manage your child's screen time and kind of wean them a little bit, put some controls in place, and so on and so forth. So step one, you as the parent or guardian or aunt, uncle, grandma, whoever you are, you need to determine how much screen time to allow outside of schoolwork or an occupational need. And some of our students may require a assisted language device where that device, allows them to speak for themselves, right? So they need that. And so we got to be mindful of that, not to cut that out, But if they have other stuff on that device that allows them to spend screen time that's not them using it for language, we need to monitor that. And we also need to make sure we monitor how much screen time that they have outside their schoolwork, because they got to get their work done. And so one way is 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the evening, right? Another is 45 minutes in the morning or 45 minutes in the evening on weekends. But this is just a personal choice, because each one of us, either you know your loved one or your child that you're caring for, so you kind of set the routine up on how many minutes they can actually spend on, you know, a device, and make sure you stick to it. And one thing that gets a lot of us parents in trouble is that we'll set something up like this, like screen time. We'll say 25 minutes and that's it. And then we'll get distracted. The next thing you know, it's 45 minutes, it's an hour. And all of a sudden it's 2 hours and gone by. Oh, we're like, oh crap, I got to go back and make sure he gets off that screen. And then we've kind of just blew this whole part out of the water. So we got to be consistent with it. So make sure you do whatever works for you. But the main thing is to be consistent, be very consistent with it. All right, step 2, again, be clear and consistent. We want to make sure that we're clear and consistent on what we're doing when we set these rules of engagement and we set these parameters in place. We need to be clear and be consistent with it. Don't make anything complicated. You just don't use a whole bunch of complicated language. Make it short and sweet, but also make it consistent, you know, and stick to your guns. And don't let whining wear you down. Because as soon as you implement something like this, right, that's out of the norm, that's taking them out of their space, you're going to hear a lot of whining, a lot of complaining, and so on and so forth. Don't let that wear you down. And I know, you know, we don't want to hear our kids whine. We don't want to, you know, get them upset or whatever the case may be. But if they're spending too much time on the screen, you know, we got to set parameters for them. That whining and stuff, we just got to ignore it. We got to do the best we can. It may be hard in the beginning, but, you know, over time, it should subside as they realize that this is the new rules of engagements that we're going to have with our devices. Tears, screaming, etc. are normal because they're hooked. Let's just face it. If you implement 30 minutes of screen time in the morning, 30 minutes of screen time in the evening, 45 minutes of screen time in the morning, and 45 minutes of screen time in the evening on weekends, they're not going to be happy with that. They're going to kick, scream, cry, because they're hooked. You're taking something away from them that they're used to doing probably for hours at a time, you know, and all of a sudden now you're taking that away from them just because they're hooked, you know. They just can't, they're having a tough time giving it up. And I don't want to necessarily use the term addicted. I'll just use that as hooked, because these are our children and they're hooked. And so you want to stick to your guns, and you want to make sure that all the adults in your household are on the same page and a united front. You know, I can't all of a sudden say Joshua is going to have 30 minutes of screen time in the morning and then 30 minutes of screen time in the evening. And then I can do it in the morning because my wife is out the door before all of us are, and I can implement that. And then in the evening, I have to go out, and next thing you know, she gives it to him because he's whining. And I come back home, he's been on it for a couple hours because she's allowed him to do that. It's got to be a united front. You got to stick to their guns and make sure that you're doing exactly what you said you're going to do. So be clear, consistent with it, be clear with it, be consistent with it. Don't let the whining wear you down. Don't let the tears and the screaming wear you down. And I know some of us as parents, we do have children living with special needs. And so we have to be very cognizant of the fact that, you know, the whining, kicking, and screaming may be a little bit more intense because they are living with a special needs. So we have to be mindful of that. And then we have to implement strategies to get this through that will work for us, and that will work in your household and work for your child. You know, this is just some guides, but you know your child or your loved one better than I do. And so you implement exactly what you think will work for you in your house, but you got to be clear and consistent with it always. Step 3, okay? Absolutely, this is an absolute. No electronics if homework/chores are not done or they've misbehaved. If they've got a red in class, or if they haven't cleaned up their room or they haven't done their homework, absolutely no electronics until the homework are done. Now, I know some of us have students that may have to use electronics at home to do their homework, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine because they have to use that device to do their homework. But if they want that device to get on, play a video game or, go look at videos on YouTube or whatever it is they want to do um, outside of homework, that's more of a pleasurable thing, then you can't do that until homework is done. Homework and chores have to be done. Or if they've, you know, had a bad day or cut up in class, so to speak, or misbehave, um, out of their own volition. I know some of our children, get sensory overload, and we can't really look at that as a misbehaving thing. It's just they got sensory overload that day. But when they actually consciously misbehave, we have to make sure that we hold them accountable for that and ensure that, hey, you had a bad day today, no electronics today, or we got to do something different. All right. Remember that screen time is a privilege and not a right. In our society as a whole, a lot of things in our society, especially with a younger generation, I hope I don't have any young folks on here, feel as though things that they want and they do is a right, when it's really a privilege. It's really a privilege. I mean, there's nothing written. I would love for somebody to show me anywhere that is written that's a law that says I have to give my child an iPhone. That's a personal choice. That's a privilege, and it's not a right. So we just need to be mindful of that as parents and guardians, grandmas, aunties, moms, dads, and caretakers, that screen time is a privilege and not a right. And screen time must also correlate to doing the right things. That goes back to the misbehaving part. And so we have to make sure that our loved ones and our children are doing the right things. If they're supposed to get homework done, you get your homework done, cool. Screen time, that a lot of time you get, by all means. Some of our kids will come home and go straight to the homework because they know they got that screen time waiting, get their homework done or do those chores. Screen time should correlate to doing the right things. We shouldn't reward bad behavior or lackluster behavior of doing chores, reward that with screen time. So that must correlate with doing the right things. Step 4, and this is going to be a hard one. I know some of our parents they may not say they're a little soft at heart, but some of us are, and we've given in and we've kind of done things that way. But check the phones, tablets, iPads, computers at the door. Get a hold of them. And what that means is don't be afraid to lock those items away from your children. If they can't get them, they'll stop trying. They're going to give you some grief in the beginning, but it goes back to, you got to be consistent. You got to be consistent with your message. You got to be consistent with your methods. And so don't be afraid to lock those things away. It's not the end of the world. It's not going to cause inflation to go up or down. It's not going to cause your mortgage or rent to be paid, not be paid. Your child is not going to starve to death because you've taken the iPads or tablets or computers away and locked them away. Now, again, I want to be mindful that we may have some of our parents on here that may have children or students that need assistive technology devices in order to communicate. That's fine. Let them have that. You don't take that away, but those things that they want to do that are games or social media or internet and things of that nature, if they're using for those, lock them behind the door. Keep them locked away if you need to. Because if you don't, they will find them and they know that they're not supposed to have them and they'll go hide with them. I remember years ago when Joshua was a lot younger, we borrowed him from the iPad and thinking that he was just going to listen to us, borrow him from the iPad, and we put it somewhere and he eventually found it. And then when we went looking for it, it's like, where's this iPad? And then where is he? He disappeared. We found him. We went around the house looking, and then we just stopped and said, let's listen. And then we listened. And next thing you know, you hear this laughing or whatever it was, talking Tom or whatever it was, coming from one of the closets where he had gotten in the closet, closed the closet door, hiding behind some clothes, playing on the iPad when he knew he wasn't supposed to have it. when he knew he wasn't supposed to have it. So put them away, lock them away. Don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to do that at all. Anybody have any questions so far? Okay. If you got any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and I'll get to them as soon as I can. Step number 5, you want to be vigilant. All right. You want to be vigilant in this process. And what that means is when they do get screen time, you want to make sure you monitor what they're doing. There's a lot of tools and apps out there that you can put on devices to monitor and track what your child is doing. You can also, I mean, we've put those devices on, and our son figured out how to get to the internet still through one of the apps. Tell you a quick story. Joshua was barred from, he had just discovered YouTube, and his favorite character was Elmo from Sesame Street. Well, he found a way to find a YouTube video Elmo where Elmo was cussing. And we was like, oh, no, we heard it. We was like, oh, no, well, no, buddy, we can't do this. So what we did was we took and disabled Safari on the iPad. So all he had in terms of internet access was he just had the apps, and that was it. And most of the apps he had didn't allow you to get internet access. It was just the app. You play with the app and that's it. Well, our son figured out how to get to the internet and get back on YouTube through the Talking Tom app. For those that may not be familiar with Talking Tom is an app that basically is a cat that our children talk to, and it talks back to them. It's an interactive app. And you can swipe it and smack it and do all these other things and make all these noises. And so through the Talking Tom app, he found a way inside the app to get back out to YouTube. So we had to regroup and drop back 5 and punt and figure out how do we now monitor this a lot better. And so when he would do screen time, we would stand, hover around him a little bit, look over his shoulder to make sure that he wasn't going back out to YouTube again through Talking Tom app. So we want to make sure we monitor what they're looking at. And so for our older kids or students, you want to see who they follow and who follows them on social media. And if they don't want you to see it or monitor it, then say, hey, listen, I got to know what you're doing. If you don't want me to see it, then we're going to have to, either you have to get off that social media or your screen time is over. Because we want to protect our children. There's a lot of people out here in this world that are mean and cruel, and to put it frank, they can be predators, and they prey on children that are on social media and on the internet, trying to lure them out and lure them to different places and stuff like that. And so we have to be vigilant. And of course, there's also controls and apps out there for social media as well that we can monitor and do all those things. And in addition to following them, you can also put some tools out there, and there's plenty of them out there. I didn't bring them up or put them in this presentation, but there's plenty of them out there that you can put on your children's devices to monitor that sort of thing. Step number 6, try to explain to our children the dangers as best you can. I know some of our children may have some receptive and expressive language delay and other challenges they may be living with, but try to explain to them the dangers of what's out there on the internet as best as you can, because this is for their protection. This is ultimately for their protection. And if it takes you a long time to explain it, then take a long time to explain it. But just find a way to get the message through to your child or your student, the dangers of the internet, and let them know that you're not trying to ruin their fun, but you're trying to protect them. Because a lot of times, when we tell our kids, especially when they become teenagers, we're trying to tell them things for their own good. Most of them think that they're grown. And then what ends up happening is they have to end up learning the hard way. And hopefully the blessing will be that they don't learn the hard way to where it's something that's real catastrophic or fatal or damaging to them when they do find out. But a lot of them is like, we went through it with our son. I'm grown, I'm 19 years old. And then we back off a little bit, and then he sees other friends and what they're doing. And he's like, well, I ain't grown yet. I see they're trying to be grown and they're not doing right. And so we've been trying to tell you, buddy, we're not here to be a prison warden. We're just here to make sure and share with you the things you need to look out for, because this world out here it can be a cruel world. You also want to find examples of screen time gone wrong and explain that to them as a model or a guide. I would even use yourself as an example of screen time gone wrong and explain to them as best as possible as a model or a guide. This is what happens, or find a story out there that you can share with them that screen time has gone wrong, where somebody may have gotten swindled or somebody may have gotten hurt. Don't do anything that's totally frighten them in terms of find a story that's related to death, but just give them something that they can really resonate. Give them something that can resonate with them, that they know that it's possible that these things can happen. It has happened on screen time, and these are some of the dangers they need to watch out for. Step number 7, expect boredom. Expect boredom. So what that means is, if you go by the 30, Monday through Friday, 45, Saturday and Sunday model that I laid out in the earlier slides, there's going to be times in between those screen times where it's going to get real boring for them. So, you got to expect boredom. And that's when you're going to start to see them start to whine and cry that they don't have the electronic devices. I'm so bored. This is terrible. I don't have anything to do. Blah, 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 wah, right? And I'm bored is really code for I want my electronic fix because I'm hooked. That's what it's really code for. I'm bored is code for I want my electronic fix. Because think about it, right? Our children, since the pandemic, has been inundated with the screen time, right? That's all they really know. And I'm pretty sure because of screen time, a lot of our students haven't actually been reading a physical book. It's been from a tablet, which is screen time. And so that's what they become used to and become accustomed to. And so with that in front of them, that's what they attribute to being engaged, is that screen, whether it's the tablet, the iPad, the computer, smartphone, or any other electronic device, that's what they become fixated with. And that's when they say, I'm bored. That's actually code word for I want my electronic fix. Don't fall for it. Okay. If they have nothing to do, it's okay, because you're not on the screen, but it's okay. And this is a perfect opportunity for us as parents, to reinvent a lot of family time. Entertaining with family fun, board games, Monopoly, teaching them about money, shoots and ladders, card games, Uno, those sorts of things. Twister, to get them some physical activity. Get them outside. If it's warm outside, get them outside, take them to the park. For those that live locally near the Bowie area, there's Allen Pond, there's National Harbor, things down there to do. There's a ton of things to do outside that we can get them outside and get them away from these screens and entertain them. So we got to make sure that we recognize that they're going to be bored. They're probably going to whine and cry about being bored. Their word bored, I'm bored, is code word for I need my electronic fix, and try to entertain them as much as possible. Don't all of a sudden, and the biggest thing I want to say here at this point is with the boredom piece is, when you go back through the first several steps, when you start to lay out your plan for cutting screen time and things of that nature, make sure you have a plan. Don't just cut screen time and say 30 minutes here, okay, now you're done, and then just walk away from your child and leave them be, and so on and so forth. Have a plan. Help them with homework. Do something as a family together, but have a plan, and just don't leave them out there by themselves, because the first thing they're going to be in shock of is that they don't have their device in front of them anymore like they used to. That's going to be a shock. And if they've been on it long enough, since March 2020, here we are 2022, and kind of been back and forth, and they're used to those electronic devices, it's going to be a shock to the system. And it's going to take them some time getting used to. So we just don't go pulling it cold turkey. We got to ease into it. We got to do things and make sure we got a solid plan, which is entertaining them when we don't have screen time. Okay. Step number 8, guide or direct them to alternative activities. It goes back to what we talked about in step number 7 at the end. Guide them toward alternative activities. It don't always have to be screen time. right? Do other things that will get easier over time once they're realizing whining and crying is not working. Once they realize that, and that goes back to being consistent. Once they realize you're consistent with this, and this is the way it's going to be, the whining and crying is going to stop, and then doing other things will eventually come easy over time. Once they realize that that whining and crying is not going to work, you're not giving in. And then help them do other things like playing cards and board games. Don't just leave them to themselves. Help them, encourage them. You know, it's getting ready to become spring here soon. Parks and restaurants maybe start opening back up. Hopefully we can, you know, get to a place where this pandemic is winding down and we can get more outside time and do more things and whatever. But we got to make sure that we have something for them to do. We can't just, like I said, leave them out there by themselves with no device that they're used to having. Have their game plan, help them, you know, play cards with them. You know, Joshua and I often play Uno. You know, we'll play Uno until he gets mad at me beating him, but he'll beat me like 5 times in a row. And then I'll run off 6 in a row and he's mad and he want to stop. And I'm like, yo, you can't stop, dude. I took the beatings from you. You got to take the beatings from me. But anyway, step number 9. Expect relapses and regression. It's going to happen. You're not going to get this perfect. From what in your mind, your plan is you're not always going to get it perfect. And here's why. Stuff happens. Stuff will happen in our lives because life will still go on. Even though you're trying to implement screen time and pull your child or loved one away from that screen time or minimize it, our lives around us are still going to happen. Their life is still going to happen. Stuff might happen that might require you to have to rely on those electronic devices during emergencies. And it's okay. It's okay. But we got to get back on track. If that happens, if those emergency times come up, we got to get back on track and get back to being consistent. You know, there may be some times where you're out and about and something's going on or something comes up that's unexpected. And all of a sudden, you know, you got to tend to something, an emergency, and they've already burned up their screen time and you can't entertain them. You may have to give them that device back just to keep them, you know, calm or occupied while you're dealing with that emergency. And that those relapses and regressions are okay because they're not a regular thing. You know, emergencies don't always happen. Emergencies don't happen every day. And so stuff will happen, again, that may require you to rely on electronics during those emergencies, and just know that it's okay. It's not going to bust your plan up. As long as you get back to the plan, once that emergency or those things happen is over with, you get back to your plan. And, you know, when that happens, monitor how often you have to rely on electronics for conflict avoidance or babysitting or whatever the case may be. Just keep in mind how much you have to rely on that and keep track of those things that come up, you know, that you have to rely on the electronics for, you know, again, conflict avoidance and babysitting or whatever the case may be. Keep track of that stuff because you want to stay consistent with it. And hopefully everyone on here who is challenged with this can get to a point where they can get out the gate smooth, develop those habits, can roll right into a consistency on a regular basis. They see their child start to improve. Everything is fine before one of these relapses or regressions happen to happen. Hopefully there's enough foundation already set to when one of these relapses happen, it's easier to go back to the norm of consistency of monitoring or limiting that screen time. And it's not that big of a drop, or you don't have to do everything all over. And if you have to, you have to. You know, it's not the end of the world. You may have to, but it's not the end of the world. Step number 10, make adjustments as necessary, okay? Again, like I said before, the 30 to 40 minutes, 30 minutes during the weekend, 30 minutes Monday through Friday, morning and night, and 45 minutes on the weekends, morning and night, might not be the plan. It might not work for you. You may have to try something completely different. Or you may do that 30 minutes during the week and 45 minutes on the weekend, but you may not have to make adjustments to it based on whatever circumstances you're dealing with. So it's you know, if your plan isn't working well, it doesn't mean it's a failure. You should give up. You just have to adjust that plan now. You know your child, you know what's going on, and you may have to adjust that plan if it doesn't seem to be working well. or it needs to be adjusted because you see maybe something is kind of off or whatever the case may be. But again, it doesn't mean that your plan is a failure, and you shouldn't give up because it may not be working the way you want it to. You just make the adjustments to keep it moving. We do it all the time as adults at a job, at home. Things don't go our way. We make the adjustments to keep it moving, and if necessary, tweak the screen time, etc. But don't abandon it. Don't abandon it. If you got to tweak the screen time, just tweak it, but don't abandon that screen time. You have to stay consistent with that screen time, but don't abandon it altogether. And if they whine, as you see, I put in caps with exclamation points. So just remember that you're in charge. You're the one that is in charge, and you're the one that's being consistent and setting the precedence for this. And you're the adult. You're the parent or the guardian or the grandma that's taking care of the grandson or daughter. You're the one in charge. So if they whine, so just let them know, hey, this is how it's going to be. Get used to it. Step 11, do an electronic sabbatical, or what we call a fast, right? Because we do have a lot of educators on here, we'll stick with the term sabbatical. Teachers and professors like to take sabbatical, so we'll use sabbatical in this reference. So do an electronic sabbatical. And what that looks like is, if, for instance, you have a loved one that goes to maybe a summer camp, maybe like Camp Sunshine or something like that, where they don't really have a lot of electronic devices or don't allow them, or some sort of program, like with Parks and Rec or whatever the case may be, that doesn't allow electronic devices, take advantage of that, because that's a built-in system that will help you at home get them used to having limited screen time. That's the rule. The program says it's a rule. Joshua is at the Workforce Technology Center in Baltimore. One of the rules is you can't have your phone in class during the instruction day. Okay, so you don't have your phone. When they get out of class or when they go to lunch, they get their phone. If they get a break, they may check their phone. But while you're in class, no phones. Then when the day is over with at 3:30, they get their phone, go to the rec room, eat dinner, whatever they want to do. But during those times where classes in attendance, no phones at all. And so if you can find a camp or program that has that built into their program, that no electronics, take advantage of that. That will help you. Trust and believe it will help you, because you can take those same benefits and kind of piggyback off them and use them at home, because after a while they become used to not being able to have electronics at that camp because they're doing other things. But you got to be like the camp though. You got to be consistent and have things for them to do alternatively outside the electronics. You can't just say the electronics is gone, just leave them be, like I said before. Okay. And if a program is not doable, do it at home, right? Do a sabbatical at home or do something like that at home, but incentivize it. Give them some incentives with some sort of reward. Say, hey, we're gonna do a week of no electronics other than your tablets you got to use for school. After that, we're just gonna do no electronics at all. No electronics for family dinner, none of that stuff. And your reward will be a trip we'll go down to Chesapeake Beach for spring break, or we'll go to such and such for spring break. But don't give them a reward that's a video game or some other electronic device, because you're just feeding right back into them being hooked. But give it some sort of incentivized reward to say, hey, we can take this amount of time off from electronics. Hey, this is what we'll do. Maybe we'll go for pizza at your favorite restaurant on Friday, or something like that. But don't incentivize them with electronic devices, because that's just feeding into their already hooked nature on these devices. And step number 12, and this is the biggest one of them all, and it goes back to being consistent, is be the role model. If we're going to cut screen time for our children, let's lead by example and cut screen time for ourselves. Okay? Let's make sure we lead by example. Okay? When you're with them, don't check your phone. Do the screen, limit the screen time with them. If they only get 30 minutes of screen time, right? When their 30 minutes is up, then you don't use your phone. And if you check your phone or whatever your case may be, if you have to answer the phone for a phone call, that's fine. You have to answer your phone, but don't use your phone to be checking emails in front of them, playing Candy Crush or whatever these other games, or checking your social media account, and things of that nature in front of them. Do it with them so they can see that you're modeling the same thing that they're doing. Okay? Do the sabbatical with them. Do the 30 minutes with them. Do the 45 minutes on the weekend with them. Especially at family dinner, put those phones away. Make sure those phones are away. My wife and my son went to family dinner at a restaurant on Saturday, and my son left his phone in the truck. It was like no phones at dinner, so he left his phone in our truck. I was like, okay, all right, my man left his phone in the truck. So it was like, okay, cool. But his mom and I, we still had to take our phones because what if we get a call or whatever? But we didn't take them out. We kept them away. And so you have to model that same behavior that you want your children to have. You know what I mean? Do the off screen time with them, and then catch up if you need to do it away from them or do it out of their sight. Like I said, make sure you're out of their sight and out of the way. For our educators on the phone, our associate directors, our principals that have to check their emails on a constant basis. If you're doing a sabbatical with your loved ones or your children, make sure you step away. Oh, I got to use the bathroom. Well, take your phone with you. Go in there, check your emails. Come back out, have that phone away. Lead by example. Be the example. Do that off screen time without them and catch up on it. Or after they go to bed, then get on your phone after they're in bed and they're asleep to get caught up. Okay. 12A, be a role model again. Make the time for family fun so that they know you are serious. So when you do that family time and you put that phone away and you're trying to get them to do activities, whether it be play Monopoly, Twister, Uno, whatever the case may be, make sure that they know that you are serious about this. Not that it's obligational. Don't go, some of us sometimes as parents, we have a notion to, oh gosh, we'll say it out loud, what we shouldn't say about what we're going to do or what we have to do. Sometimes we'll give a big sigh or mumble under our breath. No, do it with enthusiasm. Come on, let's go. We're going to play Twister. Let's go. Be excited about it. Make that family time fun and let them know that you're serious about it and not just going through emotion, because they'll pick that up. They will pick that up. The biggest thing is don't be a hypocrite. Don't put your child on a phone sabbatical on a 30-minute time frame, 45-minute time frame, and they're sitting there looking at you, spending all this time on Candy Crush or spending all this time binge watching The Resident